What is happening, fishing friends? Have you ever been reeling in your baitcaster and all of a sudden noticed an issue with the line guide? You're reeling it back and forth and all of a sudden starts doing that. Starts going to each side, gets stuck. You have to move it with your thumb or like this, kind of got to jiggle it. What's the deal with that? Well, if you've ever had that problem, you're in luck because today we're going to take a look at how I was able to resolve that on this old baitcaster. And we're also going to discuss how a dirty baitcaster like this can also give you problems with the old line guide. But first, we need to take a look at how the old line guide works. So as you can see here, this is an older reel. You probably remember this from a few videos back. This is my Pops' old VMAG that I restored, cleaned it all up and got it working until the first time I brought it out. Brought it out and I started to notice there was an issue with the line guide not moving back and forth freely. So I fixed it, which we will take a look at. But first, how does this work? Well, as you can see, or as you can see better here, the line guide sits in the little worm gear here. Now the worm gear moves by a series of gears that is driven by your handle here. As you turn these, turns all these gears to one final little gear here that's connected to your worm gear and turns that. So this worm gear inside here, this one with the little teeth all in there, that spins. The actual line guide doesn't really do anything. There's just one piece in here, this little guy called the Pawl. So that piece, these two little teeth kind of sit in those grooves, and as you move your handle and it turns that worm gear, that Pawl moves that line guide back and forth. As you can see, it keeps sticking. Moves that line guide back and forth. So that's evenly distributing line on your spool there. And as you reel in, it just puts the line on your reel. So again, this is the reel I fixed up for my old man. I was excited to get it on the water and test it, and then it was doing this. The first time I had it out, it kept sticking. So I remembered I've had this issue on a few other baitcasters, and usually older ones. So if you're somebody that likes to buy some old fishing gear, you know, use stuff off online or wherever it is, or you just keep your gear for a long time, especially if you don't maintain it, you might run into this problem. So fixing it on an old baitcaster like this is easy. I'm going to move this over to one side, like so. We can easily see it. An old baitcaster like this is easy. You can see this housing unit here for the Pawl is right here. It's easily inaccessible. But if you have a new age baitcaster like this, you can see it's stuck up under this front grill here. Now we'll also take a look at how we would fix it on these. We'll tear this apart and get into it. But these old ones, man, they were just a little bit easier. So let's pop this off. Geez, you'd think I'd never used a screwdriver before. All right, there we go. So pop that off, and as you can see inside there is that little Pawl. So give it a nice little gentle persuasive tap here. Maybe a little bit more gentle. There we go, nice and gentle, just like that. And as you can see, that is the old damaged gear. Now, you probably won't be able to really tell. Now, I brought a little guy here to help show what I'm talking about. It's pretty tough to tell, but as you can see on the right side of that Pawl, see how it's kind of worn off to a right angle? Kind of comes up to a little point, rounded point. That right side is completely worn off. So what's happening is this Pawl, these two little teeth, sits in the groove right here of your worm gear. So it sits just right in these grooves. So as this is moving, it keeps going back and forth. Now you'll notice as I turn this, it's essentially just a screw. So it's moving that all the way over to one side. Then when you get to the end, the very far end here, it just starts that loop again in the opposite direction. So really it's just a never-ending turning and just keeps this thing going back, forth, and puts line on your reel. But what happens when that is damaged, it doesn't allow it to make that turn. And that's why, ooh, there's a good shot of it. You can see there it's messed up on that right side. But anyway, that's what's happening here, and it's not allowing this to keep going back and forth. It gets to that end and doesn't want to turn. So got a replacement here. As you can see, this guy, maybe like that, there we go. This guy is nice and even on both sides. So there shouldn't be any turning issues with that. I've already tested it, and this one works out nice. So to fix it, it's super easy. You just put the new one in there, give it a little turn to make sure it's in the grooves, like that. Find my cap, put that baby back on. Pretend like I know how to use a screwdriver here. And you don't ever want to over tighten these. You can see that when I'm tightening this actually has a metal nut that goes on here and secures this. On the new stuff these days, this is all graphite or plastic. So just be very careful with this not to over tighten it. That's the one bad thing about graphite reels is if you do your own work and any of these screws or anything that's going into the frame on a graphite reel, you got to be very careful. So, all right, so there we go. Got that all tightened up, and just like new, look at that, it's working again. We done. All right, so that's all we needed on this reel to get it fixed was a new Pawl. Now on these older reels, it was really easy to get to. That part is right here. It's just a quick in and out, done. You just have to make sure you get the right size Pawl to fit your baitcaster. Newer baitcasters, it's a little bit different. As you can see here, it's all up under this plastic. Now let's first talk about a dirty reel. Luckily, I've got my old LEW'S speed spool here. This has been a very trusty reel. I have never had a single issue with this. I think this is like a 4-year-old reel. Brought it back out of retirement this year and used it for only about a month of frogging, and look at that. Oh man, I admit I have been lazy on cleaning my reels, but it is winter. It is time to clean, so let me know. Let me know if that's something you would like to see. Would you like to see a reel cleaning video on this? Comment below. Comment below and let me know if you'd like to see a reel cleaning vid. I've got all winter. I need stuff to do. Getting Debo dungeon sick, being down here, talking on a camera. Anyway, how does a dirty baitcaster have the same issues? Well, as you can see here, this line guide, there's a little silver bar, I guess you want to call it, that runs right through here. It runs through, there's a hole in the line guide, and that's what it sits on. It sits on that and goes back and forth. Now, as you can see on each side of this, see how this dirt and stuff is all collecting on these sides here and down in here? The more dirt that collects on that, as this line guide keeps going back and forth and it gets to these ends, if there's a whole bunch of dirt there stopping it, it's going to cause wear on that pawl. It's also very likely to cause wear right on the end of these. So where it will cause issues is right here. You see that little pointy piece right there, that last one sticking down looks like a vampire tooth? That pawl, if it can't get all the way over to the side of this bar because there's a bunch of stuff blocking it, will tend to rub on that last tooth, and you can end up wearing and grinding off that tooth, or again the sides of your pawl because it can't turn freely, so it's kind of clicking and smacking on the end of that, and it will just wind it down and grind it off. So that's why it's very important to keep your bait casters clean. Usually if I have a couple days of frogging like this where everything's really dirty, I'll just take some Q-tips down in here and get all that stuff cleaned off. Put just a real tiny thin layer of oil on there. Same thing for my worm gear. As I go through the year, if I need a little bit of lubrication in there, I'll put oil in. Now generally when I clean mine, I do a very slight little layer of grease in there, just a couple dabs, so it can go back and forth. I know some people say don't ever use grease, only use lube in there, you know, like your real oil. I have found that grease works better for me. Keeps it lubed longer, everything does well. You know, some people say, well, the grease is gonna attract stuff. Lube does the same thing, so it's really just up to you and how you clean it. I know people that do both ways and it will work as long as you've got some sort of lubricant in there so it's not metal rubbing directly on metal with no lubricant. That's what's gonna wear that out. So if you have old reels, you know, you like to do your own stuff to them, make sure you keep that lubricated. Now, what if you're somebody that wants to do this on your new reel? You've got an issue in here, the worm gear looks fine, none of these teeth in here are worn down or anything, so you're thinking it's the pawl, you want to get to it. So the question is, how do you get to the old pawl in here? How do you get this cap off and do it? Well, on a bait caster like this, it's really not that hard. I've taken the handle off, and that's really just a couple screws. You use a wrench like this, take that off, a couple pieces. The rest of it's not that hard either. You're going to take your side plate off. Pretty easy to do here until your line gets caught, and we'll just set those to the side. You're left with kind of a bare chassis, and there you can see it. Not a whole lot to these reels. It's going to involve taking out a few screws. I'll speed this up because it's pretty boring and I'm sure you don't want to watch. Okay, I think that's all the screws that hold the side plate on that handle side plate. Now you'll notice right here's one that you want to make sure you don't want to miss. When you need to take this grill off, you have to get this little guy. That's holding the grill on for this one, the LEW'S speed spool. Yours might be just a little bit different, but at least you'll get an idea. It's not too hard to do at all. Now, some people will say you can just take this one off like that, leave it, and you can pull this out and get to it. As long as you get over to it here on this side, you can. I know not all reels are like this. They're not that easily accessible. So for example, on this one, I could just take it apart there, be done with it. But if your reel's a little bit different, I wanted to show you just the further breakdown of it. After you take apart that, that's all there is to it. You can see here, there you go. So that little grill comes off. You've got full access to your little cap here. So again, to change it, I'm going to use this. I don't know if this will work, but there we go. Change it on one of these new guys, you would just unscrew this part, pop that out. Now with the new ones, you want to make sure they've got a little washer in here. You don't want to lose that. You can see that little guy there. Do not lose that. That's going to help keep that pressed at the right point. Keep it so it can spin freely inside there. And that's it. And that's the inside of a LEW'S speed spool. It's not too dirty. You can see some grease and stuff. Oh, well, maybe it is. Look at that. Look at all that grease inside there. All that stuff building up, getting brownish. Whole bunch of dirty stuff there. Oh man, this thing needs some TLC. Let me know. Let me know in the comments below. Would you like to see me do a reel cleaning vid on this? Get it all cleaned up. But that's all there is to it. Taking this little grill off. It's not anything to be too scared of. They're pretty easy these days to work on. I know a lot of people just don't want to mess with it, and that's fine. If you are somebody that doesn't want to do that, always take it to a professional just to be sure. But if you want to try working on some of these yourself, they're not too bad. You can see this little tooth here is, chipped off or kind of broke at the end of it. You might need a whole new worm gear. So that's not too hard to get to either. You have to take this little gear off here. On the other side, you've got a little cotter pin deal that holds it in, and that slides out. So if you ever have to fix your worm gear on a Baitcaster, it's not too bad either. Let me know. Maybe you'd like to see a vid of that, taking one of these completely apart. Maybe we'll kind of do that in the cleaning video. Let me know. So I'm going to get this all put back together while you all do your thing out there. Until next time.